Colin's Last Stand needs your help. If you like what CLS does, whether here on SideQuest in the eclectic interview podcast series Fireside Chats or the retro and nostalgia-fueled show Knockback, please consider showing your support at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Doing so not only ensures that CLS keeps making content, but it also gets you cool perks, including exclusive podcasts, early access to shows, the ability to vote on show topics, and much more. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Without you, Colin's Last Stand cannot and will not exist. Now, on to the show.
English is hard. Matt, you do it.
Let's just come right out and say the obvious. Microsoft's E3 2018 press conference was exceptional, and Phil Spencer and his team must be beaming with pride right now. Of course, that isn't to say that there weren't some hiccups and lulls here and there, and truth be told, the presser manufactured a lot of new questions that need to be answered. But if you recall in the E3 strategies video I posted last week, I noted that Microsoft needed to do one thing above all else: prove its continued relevance in the face of two rivals, Sony and Nintendo, that are currently dominating the industry. Microsoft did just that with its showing, and that's all it needed to do for the time being. Making video games is hard. It takes time, money, and patience. The ship seems to be on the right course now. Everything else will either fall into place or not, but at least the compass, the map, and the captain all seem to be pointing towards and sailing in the same direction. Exclusives always win the day at these conferences, and I'm eager to talk about those, but I actually want to begin our conversation in the realm of third parties, because it's there that I think Microsoft not only showed its relevance, but actually proved its immense behind-the-scenes pull. I totally understand that one of the criticisms of this conference will be that many of the most exciting games will be on PlayStation 4 too. That's a totally valid observation, and as a PS4-centric gamer, that is one of my takeaways too. But think about all of the games, all of the big games in fact, that were either revealed outright or shown off in more detail than we've seen in the past. These are big gets. Having only a couple of these would be awesome in a normal year. So I was personally pleased to see Xbox throw its weight around by having what I would deem several years worth of big, third-party reveals in one show. A big reveal happened towards the beginning of the show and will likely be obscured by other, frankly bigger announcements, but it was awesome to see Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which is being developed by PlayStation-friendly studio From Software, the minds behind Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne, and is being published, interestingly, by Activision, who, unless I'm forgetting something, had no other presence at the show. But there was more here. Square Enix showed up with a few key titles, most important among them Kingdom Hearts 3, which is a big deal since the Xbox brand is a wasteland when it comes to that franchise. It was surprising seeing a look at Fallout 76, considering Bethesda's press conference will have begun some 4 hours after Microsoft's ended. Metro Exodus has my attention too, though with a February 22nd, 2019 release date, it seems like that day on the calendar is going to be a publisher bloodbath. Capcom's Devil May Cry 5 was also a huge pull. Capcom doesn't have their own press conference, so they need to spread their wares around, and while the publisher has a long-time, very positive relationship with Microsoft, DMC5 is something you'd expect to see at PlayStation's showing, not Microsoft's. The Japanese flavor of Bandai Namco's Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition and Jump Force felt far more out of place at an Xbox conference than Devil May Cry. It was also nice to see extended looks at other big multi-platform third-party AAA games like The Division 2 and Dying Light 2, the latter of which I couldn't be any more excited about. I absolutely adore Dying Light. It's one of the best games of the generation, full stop. On the other hand, The Division 2's premiere did highlight a few issues for me with all E3 press conferences generally. No matter how cool a game looks, I only want to see it for a few minutes at most, unless it's a humongous game essential to a console or a publisher. So your Halos or your Uncharted's or Anthem, like with EA in their presser yesterday. The Division 2's demo was heavily scripted from a voice actor standpoint, and it felt unorganic, even if I loved watching it. These sorts of demos remind all of us of how games aren't played, with slow camera pans and glacial movements and incredibly granular voice chat. At the end of the day, it calls into question whether press conferences need to be as long as they are. This Xbox One press conference was around 100 minutes long, and even though I think they did a great job, they could have probably cut trim and gotten it down to an hour or 70 minutes. But I digress. But if you wanted to see a display of Microsoft's relevance, then you needed to watch until the very end of the press conference, when Phil Spencer was wrapping things up, only to be interrupted by something exceptional: the reveal of CD Projekt Red's long-in-development RPG, Cyberpunk 2077. This is arguably the most anticipated game with the hardcore sect of gamers, period, and so having it as your conference's stinger is absolutely massive. Yes, this is going to be on PlayStation 4 and PC too, but that doesn't matter. Third parties abandon sinking ships, or at least ships they anticipate will soon be at the bottom of the ocean. Just look at Nintendo in the Wii U era. It's not that Cyberpunk and all of these other games are coming to Xbox One, it's that these publishers want to maintain a relationship with Microsoft so close that they're willing to use the company's E3 presence as a platform, albeit a free platform, to elevate their multi-platform wares. That people are so focused on exclusivity or lack thereof in this regard is the truest example of missing the forest for the trees I've seen in quite some time. If Xbox was on the decline, these publishers and developers wouldn't want anything to do with Microsoft. Another place Microsoft displayed its relevance for the world to see is with the new studios it acquired or built from the ground up. 5 such studios were announced during the press conference, and this, to me, is the biggest long-term win for Microsoft, and probably the most substantial portion of their lengthy showcase when it comes to the health and future trajectory of Microsoft's console and game creation businesses. This too is something that I think would be, and for some is, fairly easy to bash Xbox over. Instead of growing studios and finding thoughtful collaborations, Microsoft seems to have largely purchased developers that add numbers to Microsoft studios, but not necessarily gravitas. That's a point perfectly taken, but it's important to keep in mind what I noted earlier. Steering the gaming ship isn't like turning a fine-tuned sports car. It takes preparation and seed setting, and this move, while far from a sure thing, should give peace of mind to Xbox gamers that have watched Sony dominate the first-party competition between the two rivals. Remember, when Sony bought Naughty Dog in 2004, they were making Jak and Daxter. Now they're arguably the greatest developer in the world. The biggest announcement of all is that Microsoft has started a studio in Santa Monica, California called The Initiative. This is huge, and I think where the studio is actually matters. Within 20 miles or so of Initiative HQ, you have Naughty Dog, Sony Santa Monica, Riot Games, Activision Blizzard, Treyarch, Insomniac, EA, and more. The Los Angeles area's game development scene is the most vibrant in North America, and it's incredibly wise for Microsoft to join the geographic area with a first-party studio. This won't only inevitably attract top-tier talent from nearby studios, full of people who wouldn't have to relocate or wholesale change their lives, but it allows Microsoft to tap into the gaming pulse of the city and the area, which, as a resident of Santa Monica, I can tell you is far, far stronger from a game development standpoint than the likes of San Francisco, which is full of more game journalists and media types than devs. Trust me, this is a big announcement, and it's worthy of your excitement. Game dev friends of mine that I talk to in this area have been chattering about this for some time. There's buzz around it. Of course, it's easier to be a little more critical of Microsoft when it comes to acquisitions, although I personally find myself far more on the optimistic side of the seesaw. Undead Labs, known for its 2 State of Decay games, already has a deep second-party relationship with Microsoft, so this sort of move just makes sense, even if State of Decay 2 was a disappointment. Likewise, Playground Games' relationship with Microsoft is also second-party, and their games are doing great in the ecosystem, although I question the wisdom of having 2 first-party studios known for racers. Remember, Microsoft already owns Turn 10, and there's evidence in Sony's first party that this mixture doesn't work. When Sony bought Evolution Studios more than a decade ago, it created a redundancy with Polyphony Digital that was only resolved when Evolution was closed following the Drive Club debacle. It's not to say history will repeat itself here, it's just to say that it could. It's hard to really argue with the purchase of Compulsion Games, though, whose potential breakout hit, We Happy Few, hasn't even launched yet. So that could be the cheapest get ever if they turn out to be huge with little downside. And buying Ninja Theory adds much needed storytelling and plot-based game know-how to a group of developers that just don't excel there. You may recall that Ninja Theory once had a first-party relationship with Sony and wanted it to continue, which Sony didn't. So there's a little extra drama there too if you're into that sort of thing. But if you're looking for immediacy combined with relevance, then I think you have to look at Microsoft's first-party lineup, both for better and for worse. Showing off 343 Industries' upcoming Halo game, Halo Infinite, was a really nice way to start the conference. Although Halo's weight with gamers has surely diminished, it's still a franchise so intimately connected with the Xbox brand since day one back in 2001 in fact, that it's more a symbol than anything else. The trio of Gears of War announcements towards the other end of the conference puzzled me a little more, at least at first. Gears of War seems to be a franchise that's in desperate need of deliberate thought and a metered approach, as its relevance has also waned since the heady days of Xbox 360. So showing 3 games is a bit much for me. Gears Pop was weird, although it's hard to fully judge a game based on a limited trailer. Gears Tactics, on the other hand, sounds very cool. Turn-based strategy is awesome if it's handled correctly, and there's no reason why Gears can't find success there in spin-off fashion. As for Gears 5, I think it looks lovely. It looks like more Gears. I like Gears, so I can't complain there, and I doubt any existing fans of the franchise are negatively grumbling about what they were shown. And of course, we caught glimpses of other first-party games. Crackdown 3 is set for release in February of 2019, and I'm getting somewhat tired of seeing it and hearing about it, and I know that's a fairly common takeaway. Forza Horizon 4 looks wonderful, adding an open-world, interconnected element to the franchise. I'm a little confused by why developer Playground Games' admittance to the first-party family wasn't announced before the game was shown off, but I digress. It was also cool to see that Battletoads is finally coming back, though it's unclear to me what kind of game it'll be or who is making it, or obviously if it'll be any good. And ID at Xbox's sizzle reel had some really nice looking games in there too, although I must admit that Xbox's insistence on playing fast and loose with the term exclusive is starting to become annoying. Remember, the word exclusive in Xbox's ecosystem means that a game is on Xbox One and PC, so there's already built-in confusion. Now you're talking about if this is a timed exclusive, if this is a launch exclusive, if this is a first-party exclusive. It's just confusing and kind of lame, especially with how these things always blow up in their face. Remember the Tomb Raider fiasco from a few years back? I guess Microsoft's calculus says it's worth the risk, but I think they cause needless distractions when their language is so flippant. The glaring weakness here is that it's all about the future, not about the now. Even with We Happy Few and Forza Horizon 4 coming out later this year, 2018 is pretty bleak for Xbox, and there's little they can do about it in the moment. This was when Scalebound and Phantom Dust and Fable Legends and other games were supposed to come out, but aren't. And so I think people need to engineer a bit more patience into their outlook when it comes to Xbox, though I totally understand if your patience is spent. This was all about 2019 and beyond, and I was actually taken aback when Phil Spencer, before Cyberpunk's reveal, noted that his team was hard at work on the next Xbox consoles. And yes, he said consoles, not console. Everything we saw today is presumably an Xbox One game, so that's going to manufacture some confusion about both the present and the future that I think is ultimately going to distract from their positive showing. Still, I think Microsoft's press conference is clearly the one to beat, and with Sony seeming to take a more subdued approach to their own press conference this year, Microsoft may just win the crown, and it may do so easily. Still, it's about delivery, not promises, and Microsoft has dropped the ball here in the past, so pessimism is understood. But from my perspective, I see a brand slowly rebounding from hard times, telegraphing future moves to placate an understandably impatient audience, and doing all it can to win the all-important battle of relevance. I think Microsoft did themselves a lot of favors with their presentation.
Have a great E3!